Hello and welcome to the Power of Two Practice Less, Achieve More presentation. You are about to find out a new concept that will have you rethinking about music lessons and practice. I'll be sharing with you an insight, a secret if you will, that I uncovered recently, and I believe that if you take this insight and apply it, it's going to make a huge difference not only in your child's music practice, but also in their learning in general. But first, let's talk about the current culture of music lessons. And the current culture is this. The student goes to their weekly lesson, then the teacher lets the student go, hoping that the student will practice at home during the week before they meet again for the next lesson. Now, unfortunately, the reality is that the majority of students has a hard time or lacks the motivation to practice after they get home. But it's not entirely their fault, as you will find out later in my presentation. The minority of students that does practice regularly does the best that they can. The insight that I'll be sharing with you today will help all students practice better in less time, even the ones who are already practicing regularly at home. Now let's talk about the challenges that music students and parents face. So here are some of the challenges. Students do not practice. Students' practices are lackluster. The students only practice the easy assignments, and they do not do what's on their assignments, or they forgot many songs projects. And if you are a parent and have a child enrolled in a music class, maybe you can relate to this last point. Parents are tired of nagging their child to practice. So what is going on here? Why aren't students practicing? Doesn't the teacher remind the students to practice? And does the studio have a certain requirement when it comes to practice? Don't the parents remind them to practice at home? Well, in fact, both the teacher and parents remind them to practice. But is it enough? Unfortunately, it's not. So as teachers, at our studio, we tell our students to practice 5 days a week, 30 minutes a day. But it's not enough to tell. So what do? We expect the parents to do their jobs. Well-intentioned parents will want to force their children to practice. But the problem is, children don't want to feel forced. And another problem with practice? Students forget quickly. So let me emphasize the last 2 points here. Students do not want to be forced to practice, and they forget quickly. The secret to practicing less and achieving more lies in these two challenges, and I'm going to reveal it to you in this presentation in a moment. But let's talk about what it means to forget something quickly when it comes to music lessons. This is what happens when students forget something quickly. If they forget, they become discouraged, and if they are discouraged, they are less likely to practice. So just how fast do we forget? Well, as it turns out, quite fast and in a very short period of time. Take a look at this graph here. In 1885, German psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus did a research project on memory. Specifically, he wanted to find out how quickly humans would forget information after learning it the first time. This is the result of his study. This graph came to be known as the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. It shows the decline of memory over time. As you can see here, in 20 minutes after learning, we retain about 58% of the information. After an hour, 44%. After 9 hours, 36%. After 1 day, 33%, and so on. Now, this was a landmark research project because Ebbinghaus was the first to identify how fragile our memory was. Imagine 1 day after learning something the first time, we retain only 33%, which means 67% of the new information is lost. Now, to put it in perspective for us, the time students get out of class, they start to forget what we just taught them rapidly. By the time they get home, a lot more information has been lost, and if they wait a day later or longer to begin the practice, they will have forgotten most of the new information. This is the reason why many students are lost and they do not practice, or if they do not get the maximum results. This study has been replicated many times since with similar results, and the conclusion was unanimous. Information is lost exponentially in a very short period of time, unless we can find a way to save it. And the way to save it is to review and review often. Every time we review, we bring the forgetting curve up and therefore retaining more of what we learned in our memory bank. Now, does that mean that we should review all the time, every day, for maximum results? The answer is no, we don't need to. Studies have shown that if we space out our reviews in a certain way, we can maximize our chance for memory recall. This concept is known as spaced repetition. So the real question is, how often and when should we review so that we can maximize our recall? This graph shows the best times to review for maximum memory recall. The first and best review is immediately after class. The second best review is 24 hours later, then a week later, a month later, and so on. This is how we beat the curve and retain the most information possible. For our purposes of piano lessons, I would like for you to focus on the first two reviews, or in our case, the first two practices, immediately after class and 24 hours later. I call this the power of two because I believe this is the key to unlocking students' practice success. It's what allows them to practice less and achieve more. So practice one is the practice immediately after class, and practice two is 24 hours later. These practices are important because we capture them in the most critical times. Of all the practices that your child is going to do, these two will be the most important and the most critical. Together, they set the stage for what's to come. And if your child retains more of what she learned, she's more likely to practice after the first two times. This creates momentum and a willingness to practice more. And the power of two also provides a window of opportunity for maximum recall, so we want to capitalize on that. It is also the most practical if practice is quote-unquote forced. Now bear with me here because I'm going to explain to you how we force students to practice without them feeling forced. So like I mentioned earlier, it's not enough to tell students what to do. We need to take them by the hand and quote-unquote force them to practice. So how do we capitalize on the power of two and force students to practice? Well, introducing DKMS 2.0, Piano Lessons with a Twist. It's a lesson plus the power of two. And here's how it works. Students receive their formal weekly lessons in class, and immediately after class, students go to piano lab to review what they've just learned. This is practice one. Then students come back the next day for up to one additional hour of supervised group practice and on-the-spot tutoring. This is practice two. So the total time spent in the studio per week is up to an hour and 45 minutes. 30-minute lesson followed by 15-minute practice one, and then 1 hour practice two the following day. And here's why it works. Because we capitalize on the two most critical times by beating the forgetting curve and maximize memory recall. And students won't feel forced because practice one is considered part of the lesson and is done right after class. Practice two is no different than, say, a parent dropping off their child for soccer or basketball or karate practice. Plus, the studio atmosphere and seeing other students doing the same thing make it conducive to practicing. Well, the bonus here at our studio is practice two is supervised. One of us teachers or a tutor is there to help whenever students get stuck. It's something that a parent cannot do or do not have time to do at home. We are there to lend a helping hand. As a result, practice will be much more efficient. We take them by the hand, no more excuses or confusion. And the power of two provides a 1-2 punch for maximum results. And by watching over their practice and eliminating any problem areas immediately, we nip it in the bud. And what happens when we nip it in the bud? Well, students remember more. So if they remember more, they feel encouraged. And if they feel more encouraged, they are more likely to practice. So here are the benefits of the Power of Two piano lessons at DKMS. Students get lesson time and review time, plus they get up to an hour of supervised practice the next day. Our piano lab is conveniently set up for both practices, and it provides structured opportunities for students to practice, and it serves as a springboard that can create momentum during the week at home. And the number one benefit is this. If students put the Power of Two into practice and they spend just one more day of practicing at home, it would be much more effective than those students who practice 5 days of unsupervised practice at home done after one day of lesson. But there's more. Our Power of Two piano lessons also feature the breakthrough Australian-developed playing-based method that has students playing great sounding songs immediately, and we have the practice app that helps students keep track of their practice. So altogether, the Power of Two piano lessons, the playing-based method, and the practice app, these are the three pillars that make us unique among our peers and allow us to get fantastic results for our students. So if you would like to learn more about the Power of Two piano lessons at Dancing Keys Music Studio, I invite you to come to one of our free introductory sessions and find out how we can have your child practice less and achieve more. You can call our studio at 949-734-3567, or you can register online at dancingkeys.com. And thank you for watching the presentation.